Some stories don't end. They echo. Somewhere between memory and reality, love waits patiently. On a quiet morning at Heartland Ranch, a familiar wind blew through the trees. The horses stood still. Amy Fleming stood by the fence, heart full of something she couldn't explain. It had been years since Ty left, but today, something felt different, as if the world had paused just long enough for a miracle. Years ago, before heartbreak and healing, before time split their story, in two, Amy and Tai were everything to each other. Their love wasn't just a relationship, it was a journey. It began with small sparks, arguments in the barn, shared laughter, stubborn silences. But even then, everyone could see it. The way Ty looked at Amy like she was both sunrise and thunderstorm. The way Amy softened around him like she'd finally found a place to land. Their love grew the way things do in the heartland. Slow, steady, and rooted deep. They built a life, not just on the ranch, but in each other. Side by side, they faced storms, injuries, family struggles, and the constant challenge of working with horses that had seen their own kind of pain. And still, they found joy. In a shared coffee before the sun rose. In a simple ride through the valley. In holding hands without needing words. And then, it ended. Ty's death shattered something in Heartland. Not just in Amy, but in all of us who watched their story unfold. It wasn't just a character leaving a show. It felt like someone we knew had gone too soon. Fans around the world felt it like a punch to the chest. There were tears, real ones. Not because it was a plot twist, but because it was a goodbye. None of us were ready for Amy changed after that. How could she not? She was still strong, still kind, but something inside her went quiet. She kept going for Lindy, for her family, for the ranch. But a part of her, the part that laughed easily, that looked toward the future, was buried with Ty on that cold, aching day. But grief is strange. It's not a line you cross. It's a path you walk. And Amy, step by step, began to walk it. Even if she didn't know where it was leading. And now, after all this time, that path might be bringing her back to where it all began. Or maybe to something new. Time doesn't knock when it enters. It just slips in, quietly, like a shadow at dusk, and before you know it, the faces in the photo frames look older, the laughter in the barn sounds different, and the girl who once leaned into Ty's arms is now a woman raising his daughter alone. It's been years since that day, the one that split Amy's world in two. And though the pain has softened around the edges, like old leather worn smooth, from use, it's never really left. It sits with her in the silence. It lingers in the barn, in the creak of the floorboards, in the quiet when Lindy asks about her dad. Heartland Ranch has changed. Not in the dramatic way people imagine. No, massive renovations or flashy new tech. No, it's changed in subtle ways. Lou's voice carries more weight now. Jack walks slower but still with purpose. The fences are fixed a little quicker. The coffee is brewed a little stronger. It's a place that has learned how to survive, loss, and Amy. She's changed too. She rides with more intention now, talks less, listens more. She's taken the reins of the ranch in her own way, not to prove anything, but because the work needs doing. And there's healing in doing the work. Lindy's grown too, with her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn will. Sometimes she'll ask questions, small ones, about her dad. Amy always answers. But there's a moment every time where her breath catches just a little. Because how do you explain a love that big to someone too young to remember it? But healing doesn't mean forgetting. And moving forward doesn't always mean leaving the past behind. Sometimes it means carrying it with you. Like a photograph in your back pocket. Like a song that comes on the radio when you least expect it. And lately, Amy's been feeling something she hasn't felt in a long time. It started small. A familiar scent in the wind. A flicker of a memory at the edge of sleep. A dream that stayed with her even after she opened her eyes. She told herself it was just the past playing tricks, grief looping back like it sometimes does. But then came the letter. No return address. No name. Just a few words. handwritten in a way that looked achingly familiar. "You never left my heart." Amy read it once, then again, then a third time, her hands trembling, and for the first time in years she didn't feel alone in her grief. She felt watched, known, remembered, and just like that, something long buried deep in her chest began to stir, not fear, not hope either, something in between, something wild. It started with the horses. They moved differently one morning, restless, alert, ears twitching, eyes scanning the empty trail beyond the pasture. Amy noticed it right away. Horses don't spook for nothing, and these weren't green colts. They were seasoned, calm veterans of thunder and cattle drives. But today, they stood like statues, heads turned toward the hills as if waiting for someone to come home. Amy stood by the fence holding the note in her hand. "You never left my heart." She'd read it so many times, the edges were soft, the ink slightly smudged from her thumb. She hadn't told anyone about it. Not Lou, not Jack, not even Lindy. It wasn't that she was hiding it. She just didn't know how to explain it without sounding like someone chasing ghosts, and maybe she was. But then the signs kept coming. A saddle left out, but no one had used it. A gate unlatched that Amy was sure she'd locked the night before. The scent of campfire smoke near the creek, though no one had lit one in weeks. Little things, nothing dramatic. But they piled up like stones in her chest. One morning, while mucking out a stall, she heard it. Clear, sharp, impossible. A laugh. Not just any laugh, his, Ty's. She froze, dropped the pitchfork, turned. Nothing, just the barn, quiet and still. Her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it echo against the wooden beams. She stepped outside, blinking against the sunlight, scanning the fields. Nothing but wind, trees, sky. But something inside her shifted. This wasn't just grief anymore. This wasn't just missing someone so deeply that your mind starts painting them back into the frame. This felt different, sharper, realer, like being followed by a shadow that somehow knows your name. Over the next few days, she caught glimpses, a figure near the tree line, the glint of something metal, maybe a belt buckle vanishing behind the barn. She'd turn, and it'd be gone. Too fast. Too impossible. Amy wasn't the only one who felt it either. Jack had mentioned the wind, smelled like old stories. Lou said the ranch felt lighter somehow. Even Lindy, one evening before bed, whispered, "Mommy, I saw Daddy in my dream again." He smiled at me. Amy asked what he said. Lindy looked at her with those stormy eyes and answered softly, "He said he missed you." Amy didn't sleep that night because part of her wanted to believe. And the other part, the part that had spent years building walls just to survive, was terrified that believing would break her all over again. But whatever this was, it wasn't done. Something was moving, something was coming, or maybe it had already arrived. It didn't happen with thunder. There was no dramatic sky split open, no lightning bolt cracking the valley. No one screamed, no one fainted. It happened the way spring does, so slowly you don't notice. And then all at once. Amy was in the old barn, the one Ty used to fix up piece by piece when they were still just figuring each other out. Dust floated through the air like tiny ghosts. The kind of morning where everything feels too still, like even time is holding its breath. She wasn't looking for signs that day. She was just fixing a latch. Something simple. Something quiet. And then she felt it. You don't just see someone you've loved like that. You feel them first. Before your eyes can confirm it, your body already knows. Her fingers froze on the hinge. Her breath stopped like it was caught on something invisible. Her heart gave a single, terrified knock, and then footsteps behind her, slow, familiar, heavy enough to be real, light enough to be impossible. Amy turned, and there he was, not in the center of the frame, not glowing or godlike, just There, standing near the open barn door, sunlight painting a soft halo around him. His hair a little longer, face a little older, eyes exactly the same. Ty. Not a memory. Not a hallucination. Not a dream she could wake from. Just Ty. Her Ty. Neither of them moved at first. They just stared at each other, as if any sudden movement might break whatever spell had brought him back. Amy's lips parted, but no sound came out. Ty's voice, when it came, was soft, scratchy, like it had been waiting years to be spoken. I never meant to go that far. Amy shook her head, eyes glassy. You died. He looked at her, quiet. I thought I did too. And in that moment, nothing made sense. And somehow everything did. Maybe it was a parallel world. Maybe it was some twist of fate. Maybe the universe had finally opened a door where there used to be a wall, but Amy didn't care how. She just took one slow step forward, then another. Then she was in his arms, the world blurring around them, time folding like a letter never sent. It didn't need to make sense. Love rarely does. And for the first time in years, Amy felt whole, not healed, not fixed, just whole. And the wind outside whispered through the trees like it was clapping softly, as if even the land had been waiting for this. There are moments when the world forgets to spin, not in fear, not in panic, but in awe, as if it's pausing just for a second to witness something rare, something holy. This was one of those moments. Amy didn't speak for a long time. Neither did Ty. They sat on the old porch swing where they used to dream out loud. Now they just listened, to the creak of the wood, the wind rustling through the trees, the distant sound of hooves on dry dirt. He was here. She could see him, hear him, even touch him. And yet part of her still didn't believe it. Not completely. Because how do you hold something that once slipped through your fingers? How do you trust that love won't vanish if you blink? Ty didn't explain where he'd been. Not really. He said things like, I was lost, or it wasn't my time, but nothing that tied down reality. It wasn't about logic. It wasn't about science or time travel or dreams. It was about this. He was here. And Amy, who had spent years turning her grief into grit, building fences both literal and emotional just to survive, was now face to face with the thing she buried. The love that shaped her. The man who helped her become who she is. She didn't ask why now, or how. Instead, she asked something braver. Do you remember everything? Ty turned toward her, his eyes softer than she remembered. All of it, he said. Every laugh, every fight, every time you rode in too fast and scared the hell out of me. Amy smiled through tears. Even the way I used to burn toast? He laughed. Especially that. It wasn't just romantic. It was real. Two people who had once built a life out of chaos, finding their way back not to where they were, but to where they were meant to be. And maybe that's what love is. Not the fairy tale, not the perfect timing, but the coming back, even after the fire, even after the years, even after death itself tries to rewrite your story. Because love, real love, isn't something you move on from. It's something you carry. Through heartbreak, through healing, through silence and storms. And when it's true, when it's carved, into the deepest part of you, it finds its way back. Always. Amy didn't need a sign from the universe anymore. Ty was the sign, and the look they shared, quiet, reverent, stunned, wasn't just a reunion, it was a resurrection. Some places remember, not in the way people do with photographs and fading stories, but in the bones of the earth, in the way the wind curves through the trees, in the rhythm of the river, in the way the sun falls just right on a familiar porch at exactly 4:07 p.m. Heartland was never just a ranch. It was a memory machine. And now, with Ty back, real, breathing here, it started to remember too. Jack noticed it first. He didn't say much. Never did. But he paused longer than usual while saddling his horse, looked out across the land with that faraway stare, the kind that sees more than it says. Later, he told Lou over coffee, "It feels like the place is waking up again." Lou shrugged it off at first. Stress, weather, family chaos, but then the little things piled up. The mare that hadn't let anyone near her for months suddenly let Amy approach with no resistance. The apple tree that hadn't bloomed in 3 seasons, budding again. Even Katie said the barn smelled happier. People began to come by more often, not for help, not for horses, just to visit, to sit, as if they felt something pulling them back without knowing why. Because when a person like Ty comes home, it doesn't just change one life. It shifts the whole balance. Amy felt it most of all. Her energy returned, not the frantic survival kind, but the slow, steady spark that made her Amy again. She laughed more, stood taller, worked with a calm joy that made even the most broken horses seem to believe again. And Ty? He didn't talk about where he'd been. He just did. Fixed a fence with Jack, rode the trails with Lindy, repaired an old saddle like muscle memory had never left him. He moved through the ranch like someone slipping back into a life he thought he'd lost, but never truly left. They didn't throw a party. Didn't announce anything. Because this wasn't a headline, it was a homecoming. And sometimes the most sacred moments aren't loud. They're quiet. A soft reunion between boot and dust, between hand and hay, between the past and what's still possible. Heartland didn't need saving. It just needed reminding. And with Ty's return, it remembered everything. What if the story didn't end when the screen faded to black? What if love, true love, doesn't follow the script? Not everything that dies stays gone. And not every return has to make sense. Some reunions aren't written in calendars or carved into plot lines. They're stitched into fate, waiting for the right moment to unfold. And maybe, just maybe, this was that moment. Ty's return isn't just about Amy. It's about all of us, the ones who kept watching, kept believing, even when the world said, let go. It's for every heart that never got closure, every fan who whispered, what if he came back, and meant it with their whole soul. Because some characters aren't just fiction, they're family. And in a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, Heartland reminds us of something softer, something stronger, that the people we lose never truly leave, that sometimes the things we love the most, horses, homes, heartbreak, him, find their way back when we need them most. Maybe this was just a glimpse, a vision, a what if that the universe allowed us to borrow for a little while. Or maybe it's the next chapter waiting to be told. You decide. But if you felt something watching this, something deep, something unshakable, then stay close, because we're not done, not by a long shot. Subscribe to our channel, Nextdoor, for more stories that haunt the heart and stir the soul, the kind that feel like dreams but might just be real. There are more letters to open, more horses to ride, more love to find, and maybe, just maybe, Ty's not the only one coming home. This is Heartland and Love. Love always rides back.